One unexpected bill. That's the margin between stability and a debt spiral for most households in this country. And that margin is getting thinner every year. Not because people are careless, not because they lack discipline, because nobody ever showed them that the way they were taught to save is structurally backward. Here's what the research actually shows. The majority of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency from savings. Not people in poverty, not just people struggling. Employed, bill-paying adults who are doing, by most measures, everything right. And the reason isn't income. It's architecture. The standard advice: spend what you need, save what's left, guarantees failure. Not occasionally, predictably, because there is never anything left. There cannot be. Human spending expands to meet available money with almost mechanical consistency, and a financial system built on subscription billing, automatic renewals, and frictionless spending is specifically engineered to make sure nothing survives to the end of the month. So this video isn't about discipline. It isn't about cutting your coffee. It's about building a 60-day system that works with how money actually behaves. And it starts with a number most people have never calculated. Before we go further, let me explain something. There's a term financial planners use: the savings inversion principle. Most people save last. They pay everything, spend what remains, and hope something survives. The inversion is simple. You pull the savings amount out first, before any discretionary spending happens, and you live on what remains. It sounds obvious. Almost nobody does it consistently. The reason is friction, or rather, the absence of it. When savings is automatic, effortless, and invisible, completion rates climb dramatically. A 2021 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that automatic savings enrollment increased participation by over 40 percentage points compared to opt-in systems. The reason this matters here is that your brain isn't the obstacle. The system you're operating inside is. Here's what paycheck to paycheck actually means mechanically. It doesn't mean broke. It means your expenses have grown to meet your income, gradually, invisibly, through 100 small decisions that each seemed reasonable at the time. A streaming service, added here, an upgrade there, a convenience that became a habit. The result is a household that earns a reasonable income and has almost no buffer between now and the next crisis. And here's the part nobody says plainly. You probably cannot find $60 or $100 a month by examining your current spending and deciding to spend less. The decision architecture doesn't work that way. What you can do is find it through a forced audit, and that's where the 60-day build begins. The 60-day emergency fund system, Phase 1, the real number, days 1 through 3. Most emergency fund advice starts with a target: 3 months of expenses, 6 months, 1 month. Start somewhere smaller. The target that actually changes behavior is $1,000, a number with documented psychological weight. Research from the Urban Institute found that families with even $500 to $750 in liquid savings were significantly less likely to fall into financial hardship after a disruption than families with zero. The buffer doesn't need to be large to function. It needs to exist. So your first number isn't your 6-month goal. It's $1,000. In 60 days, run this calculation before you sleep tonight. Take your monthly take-home income and subtract every fixed, non-negotiable expense: rent or mortgage, utilities, minimum debt payments, groceries, at a realistic number, transportation costs. What remains is your discretionary float. That float is where the money comes from. Not from misery, from clarity about what's actually discretionary versus what you've treated as fixed because it arrived on autopilot. Most people doing this audit find $150 to $300 that is technically discretionary. Subscriptions, dining, impulse categories, convenience spending that has simply never been examined as a group. You are looking for $16 a day. That's all $1,000 in 60 days requires. $16. The question isn't whether it exists. The question is whether you've ever looked for it with this level of specificity. Phase 2, the friction architecture, days 4 through 7. Here's where most savings attempts die. They rely on willpower applied at the moment of temptation. That is the wrong layer to work at. Behavioral economists have spent decades documenting what happens when saving requires a decision and spending doesn't. Spending wins every time. The architecture of modern banking is not neutral. It is designed to make spending effortless and saving an active choice you have to remember to make. You flip this by building friction into the right places. Open a separate savings account, not with your primary bank. A high-yield savings account at a different institution means the money isn't visible in your daily banking view. Transfers take 1 to 2 business days rather than seconds, and the psychological separation between checking and savings becomes a real barrier. This is not a complicated move. It takes 20 minutes. And the research on mental accounting, the documented human tendency to treat money in separate buckets differently, suggests it changes behavior substantially. Next, automate the transfer. On the day your paycheck hits, a scheduled automatic transfer moves your daily $16, or your calculated equivalent, to that separate account before you see it, before you spend it, before any decision gets made. This is the inversion. You have now saved first. What remains is what you live on. If you're watching this and thinking that number doesn't leave enough to function, that's important data. It means your fixed expenses are too high relative to your income, and the solution is either income or a more significant structural expense reduction, not a smaller savings amount. We'll come back to that. But if you ran the audit honestly and found the discretionary float, and most people do, then the architecture is now in place. The system runs without you. Phase 3. The acceleration levers, days 8 through 45. The automated transfer builds the fund on a slow, reliable schedule. The acceleration levers are the variables that can compress 60 days into 40 or 30, depending on which levers you can pull. Lever 1 is the one-time audit windfall. Go through the last 90 days of bank and card statements. Identify every recurring charge, not to judge it, to see it clearly as a group. Most households find 2 to 5 subscriptions they either forgot about or no longer actively use. Canceling a $30 streaming service and a $25 app subscription generates $55 a month. Redirected to the emergency fund, that's an extra $550 over 10 months, or a meaningful acceleration in 60 days. Lever 2 is the friction tax. Every time you choose convenient spending over the lower-cost alternative, a delivery fee versus cooking, a convenience store versus a grocery run, note the difference and transfer that amount to savings that same day. Not the full spend, the difference. This keeps behavior grounded in real trade-offs rather than abstract restraint. Lever 3 is the income event. A tax refund, a birthday gift, an overtime shift, a sold item. Every income event that was not already budgeted should be split. 50% to the emergency fund, 50% free. Not 100% to savings. That triggers deprivation psychology. 50% captures the windfall without creating resentment. The uncomfortable thing about these levers is that none of them are dramatic. None of them require suffering. What they require is that you treat the emergency fund as a fixed obligation, the same category as rent, rather than a goal you'll pursue when conditions are better. Conditions never get better on their own. The conditions you build get better. Phase 4. The firewall mindset, days 46 through 60. By day 45, if the system is running and the levers have been pulled, most people are looking at $600 to $800 in an account they didn't have 2 months ago. Here is where the second failure mode appears. It's not an emergency. It's a temptation dressed as one. A car repair that could go on a card. A purchase you've wanted to make and now have the money for. A social expense that feels unavoidable. The emergency fund has one function. It exists for events that would otherwise require debt. Not convenience, not opportunity, not social pressure. Defining this in advance, before the temptation arrives, is the difference between a fund that survives and one that gets raided and rebuilds and gets raided again, which is where most people get stuck. Write down, right now, before you close this video, 3 specific scenarios that would qualify as a legitimate use of your emergency fund. 1 sentence each. Keep it somewhere you'll see when a spending decision is in front of you. That list is your firewall. It's not discipline. It's a decision made in advance during a calm moment, which is always more reliable than a decision made under pressure. Here's what most finance content won't say directly. The first emergency fund you build isn't really about the money. It's about the proof. The proof that your financial situation is not fixed, that you can change the architecture of your money and get a different result, that the paycheck to paycheck pattern isn't a permanent condition, it's a system configuration, and systems can be reconfigured. $1,000 is not financial security, but it is the first evidence that financial security is within reach, and that evidence changes how you make the next decision, and the next. The people who get this right don't have more willpower than anyone else. They built a system that doesn't require willpower. If that sounds like the kind of financial thinking you want more of, the kind that goes behind the generic advice to what actually drives behavior, hit subscribe. This channel covers the financial mechanics they never taught you, because teaching you would be inconvenient for the people profiting from your confusion. Save this video. The 3-phase architecture, audit, automate, accelerate, is the framework you'll want to come back to when the temptation hits or the fun stalls. You'll want the specific numbers in front of you, not just the general memory of having watched this. There's a question that almost nobody asks when they hear the 60-day framework. They ask about the money. They ask about the levers. They don't ask, what has living without a buffer cost you already? Not in money, in decisions made from a position of zero margin. Jobs you couldn't leave. Repairs you delayed until they became catastrophes. Risks you couldn't take because there was nothing to fall back on. $1,000 in an account changes the quality of your decisions in ways that compound over time. That's the thing nobody calculates. When you hit that $1,000 mark, and the system gets you there in 60 days if you let it, the next step is extending the buffer to 1 month of expenses, then 3. That video is already on this channel, and it covers the second phase of this system, what to do with the momentum once the first milestone is cleared. One last thing before the comment. The single most executable thing in this entire video. Tonight, open a high-yield savings account at a bank that isn't your primary bank. Set up an automatic transfer for whatever your daily $16 equivalent is. Name the account Emergency Only. Do not do it tomorrow. The research on implementation intentions is unambiguous. A plan attached to a specific time and place is 3 times more likely to be executed than a plan with no anchor. Tonight, 20 minutes. Here's what I want from the comment section. Not great video. I want to know what your current emergency fund balance is. 0. Under 500. 500 to 1,000 or above 1,000. No judgment, just the number. Because the distribution of those answers tells me exactly which video to make next. And that video might be the one that actually changes something for you.